Technical. Oh, wait. No. I'm going to call to order the Tuesday, July 5th informational meeting of the Sioux Falls City Council. Welcome to you all. We are still having technical difficulties, so this is not on channel 16, and it's not being web streamed either. But we don't want to hold up the meeting any longer, and so hopefully they'll take care of the problem, and they will join us as the problem is fixed. We'll start out with City Council staff report from Deborah Owen, City Clerk, Chief of Council Operations.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. If I may, a couple of updates for tonight's meeting. There is a resolution that the council will be approving concerning your appointments to the Southeastern Council of Governments and the Urbanized Development Council, so it's CCOG and UDC, and that will be later in the resolutions this evening. In addition, council will be approving and setting the districting commission for the City of Sioux Falls now that we've had the census and had those numbers given to the city. There was a couple questions about how that process is done, and of course the charter sets that out, and council is the one who appoints that commission. But I wanted to state it's unusual to have the party affiliations on a resolution. In fact, it's usually not done. But this charter was amended in 2010 by at the request of a citizen and then approved by the voters to make sure that we would include all 5 districts. So each district is represented on this commission, but the charter already had language in there about having no more than 3 commissioners may belong to the same political party. So you can have 3 but no more, and that's why we have those on that resolution. We're following charter with some of those qualifications. And then in addition, just to give you an update on the recodification project, that the council approved those funds to help expedite that project, which we need to get done in order to fulfill state law and charter by December 31st of 2012. Those ordinances are sent over to American Legal, who will be reviewing those and making some decisions about how to reorganize. We'll be reorganizing the ordinances in different types of more of function of chapters, as opposed to we have numbers of chapters, we have a number of appendices in terms of land use. And so that'll be combined in one code as opposed to 2, and will be renumbered as well. And that, in the meantime, the departments will be reviewing, and that's been assigned primarily through the city attorney's office, but assigned to the departments certain chapters within the code to review and to look at, and to see if there should be any technical changes made to that review, or perhaps even some substantive changes. And as you know, we've discussed in working sessions, we want to be real careful that those substantive changes aren't really changes in policy without being reviewed prior to council approval before the final adoption date. So we're still working that out, but I think we're moving forward and have decided for the most part to keep this more to a technical review given the timelines and the constrictions that are before the departments and the city council for review. We hope to have that wrapped up about September or October of 2012, and then have the entire code before the council for their final review and vote. And any questions on that?
Any questions for Ms. Owen? If not, thank you. Just to update you, we are web streaming. It just is not, we are not on channel 16. There was not a land use committee meeting last week, and so there will be no report, but maybe Councilor Brown would like to talk about what is going to be happening at our fiscal committee meeting following our informational.
Thanks, Madam Chair. We will meet, as you said, immediately following this meeting. 3 issues to discuss. We're continuing the discussion of authorization of city contracts. We'll be going over a proposal from City Attorney Fifley on that. And then we have item B is a discussion of sewer and water rate increases, the freeze program possibly for elderly and low-income families, and then finally a discussion on sewer rate and water rate increase cycles, whether they should be 3 or 5 years or annually as they have been now. So those will be the discussion. And with your permission, Madam Chair, I have a couple other open discussion items.
Sure.
I think all of us received this letter regarding Spellerberg Pool, and she had indicated she hadn't had a response back in past years. So I see Don in the audience. Don, if you could pick this up from one of us and respond to her questions, that'd be helpful. And the other thing I wanted to talk about briefly is I spent part of the holiday weekend working through the CIP budget. And I do have one concern regarding the Event Center, because I think I was very clear, and I think others of you were as well, about the expectation that the full price tag of the Event Center be in the capital improvement budget. I don't think we could have been more clear about that. I understand what Director Turbach said in his response to us, but no project. I spent a lot of time looking through parks. Don doesn't know the exact price tag for everything that's in his budget, nor does he know what the operations are going to be exactly. So to say that, use that as a reason for not putting the full price tag in or not putting the operations in, I don't think that's a great excuse. I think that full price tag needs to be in there and an estimated operational cost. In fact, Charter says it has to be in there.
Councillor Erpenbach, did you have something you wanted to comment on?
Just going to add to the letter about the swimming pool. It did come from a constituent in my district, and she asked me to copy it for all of you, and I also did send a copy to Don. So,
other open discussion? I do have one item. Today we received our first request as to a council member speaking before a group concerning the event center. And I guess my question is, I was hesitant to raise my hand because there are still so many questions out there if I'm to be speaking for the council. I want to make sure that all the ducks are in a row. I guess that I'd like to have discussion as far as if the council is asked to speak, are we speaking for the group or are we speaking as individuals? I would like to put forward a protocol as far as this in the coming months. Councillor Entenmann.
It was I that had responded and said I'd be more than happy to talk. To me, the request, I think, was a general request as far as I know. I just briefly talked to her a little bit, and it was just to see where we're at. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people do not watch Channel 16, nor are they familiar with what has transpired, or they don't go back and look at the city website or any of those things. That's all that I was going to talk about or bring up, and ask what the questions are, and if any questions did come up, I'd try to seek the answers to those questions. I think the citizens deserve to know what's going on. If they should ask the questions, we're there to answer them, as we all are. As far as what personal opinions are, everybody is entitled to a personal opinion. But I don't think that that's my case in responding to that I was actually going to bring up my own personal opinions. But I was going to be able there to answer some questions. I think we all know what some of the plans are already. I mean, we've seen the mayor's updates on a monthly basis. And we can speak to all of those things, which, by the way, like I said, a lot of citizens are not familiar with because they haven't taken the time to either watch Channel 16, look at the city website, or whatever the case might be. So that's all the intent was when the request came in from a citizen, and I thought that it would be right for us to answer that.
Right. I'm not questioning whether we have the ability. What I'm saying is, are we speaking as individuals or are we speaking as the council? And that's the only reason I bring it forward, to see what the council wants. Councillor Karski.
I guess what I would question along the same line then is if we have meetings within our own individual districts, or as an at-large council person, are we talking for our own selves when we have that meeting, or are we speaking as a unified voice for the council? So let's take it even to that level.
Councillor Erpenbach.
I think Councillor Karski has a good point that and I always try to make it very clear. We're all of us invited to speak to groups all the time about various issues, and some just are how's the job going kind of thing. But I always make it very clear that I never speak for the entire council, that I only report it from my point of view. I only report exactly what I know to be the facts. A lot of times will take handouts with me. But I think people have to understand that we do not speak for this body as a whole when we're individually appearing somewhere. If we were going to do something different, if we were going to do maybe a point-counterpoint kind of a conversation, then that would be a whole different story, because I think regardless of how many citizens watch Channel 16 or read the news or whatever, I think they understand that we come down on different sides on a lot of issues, and it may be interesting to them at some point to pull from both sides of that. But at this point, I think we make it very clear that we speak as individual. Yes, we are members of the Sioux Falls City Council, but we're individuals.
Councilor Anderson Jr.
I've already had the opportunity to speak to a Kiwanis Club group on the event center issue, and the one thing I found was very helpful is I asked Mark Cotter to come as a resource, but the one thing that the group understood is I was there as a city councilman, not I don't represent the entire city council. I think we each speak for ourselves, and if anybody speaks for the council, it should be leadership. So I think that's what they're elected for, to speak for the council, not individual council members. So I think as long as, once again, it is made plain and clear that you're speaking as a council member, on your own, then I think it's fine that we go out and provide this information.
Other, Councilor Brown.
If the event center does go to an election soon, it might be worthwhile to either have the clerk's office or the city attorney's office brief us on some of those rules of engagement in terms of, I remember during a rec center vote, a council member wearing a button advocating for the rec center and getting called into question before the ethics board. So it might be helpful to just have some of those rules reviewed for us at a future informational meeting.
I think that's a good idea. Any other discussion? So basically what I'm hearing, and tell me if I'm correct or not, we speak as individuals at this point with the information that has been given to us as a council. Councilor Erpenbach.
I think that's exactly right, but I think I would add to what Kenny said in that your council chair is always very careful, especially when there's issues that she knows we don't agree on, that she says, I cannot speak for the entire council, even though I am their elected chair. She's very careful about that. So again, as individual council members, we try to respect each other's opinions on everything.
Thank you all. Any other city council open discussion? If not, we'll go on to today's presentation, Rail Yard Relocation Project Update. Director Cotter.
Good afternoon, City Council members. Mark Cotter with the Office of Public Works. Today we will provide you a quarterly update on the railroad relocation project. Much has been done in the last 90 days. One of the items that Councilor Jameson asked me before we started is just please be clear about what's changed. And that's the way we've set up the presentation with the quarterly updates now that this is the second one. We want you to know what's occurred in the last 90 days, but also what's anticipated to happen in the next 90 days. We'll always provide an update on the target milestones and also answer your questions. Josh Peterson, our project manager, along with 2 members of the consulting team are here today, and we'll attempt to do just that. And as we've talked, that there would be a project summary sheet provided to you, and that was provided right before the council meeting. And so with that, let's get started for our quarterly update. Josh Peterson.
Good afternoon. Josh Peterson with the Engineering Division of Public Works, and as Mark said, I'm the project manager for the Railroad Relocation Project. A challenging and exciting project, and I know it's on everybody's radar as something they're interested and want to keep updated on, and I'm really happy to be able to come here today and give you an update on it. We've had a very busy last 90 days. Expect it to be a very busy 90 days coming up also, so just want to give you a little bit of a preview of what we've done and hopefully answer some questions if you have any. Just to go through what I'll be reviewing today, we'll go over a brief background on the project, since I know a lot of you maybe haven't been involved since the beginning of the project. I'll give you an update on where we're at with the environmental assessment process. Also review the alternatives that we've evaluated over the last 90 days, and finally I'll follow up on a schedule of what's to come. And start off with a background on the project. The project is based on the Railroad Relocation Master Plan, which was developed in 2001 and 2002. And out of that study, we came up with 4 main phases to that plan, with multiple projects involved in those phases and a variety of options for relocating railroad in town. Out of the plan, we've developed 3 primary benefits for what we would see by relocating some of this railroad out of downtown and out of Sioux Falls. One is we would reduce driver delay and improve safety. Anytime we can eliminate those crossing conflicts, will improve safety. It will enhance railroad operational efficiencies. Same thing with those crossings being eliminated. It allows for smoother railroad operations. And finally, it provides an opportunity for economic redevelopment in town. And if we can relocate the yard out of Sioux Falls, we can then use that property for redevelopment. To start out, I'll give you a little bit of an overview of the railroad lines that come in and out of town. BNSF has 3 main rail lines which service Sioux Falls. The Madison subdivision, which comes in from the northwest side of town. The Corson subdivision, which comes into town from the northeast side of town. And the Canton subdivision, which goes out south of town. And just to let you know, subdivision is a term that the railroad industry uses for their major lines, so hopefully not to confuse people there. Another main service provider in town is the Ellison Eastern Railroad. They've got a line that comes east and west through town. And then finally, the Dakota and Iowa Railroad also comes into town. So as we look at relocation, we need to make sure that we're adequately providing service for these rail companies. To go through the different phases of the master plan, phase 1, which has been completed, had 3 primary projects. First one is Benson Road siding, and on this project, 2 parallel tracks were installed along the BNSF Madison subdivision, along the east side of Minnesota Avenue, from the water purification plant up north of Benson Road. This track was added to replace the Milwaukee Yard and core line that was removed out of the downtown area. And the removal of that line facilitated the second project, which was the Phillips Avenue extension. The Milwaukee line or rail line was right in that corridor and needed to be removed for this project to happen. The third project is the Paisley Park underpass, and this was constructed to separate the grade between the railroad line and the park entrance road. And this is primarily done because of safety. There was some safety concerns of rail traffic down there and pedestrian and vehicle use. Phase 2 and 3 of the master plan, or what most people think about as the railroad relocation project. And these are the phases that we're currently working on. Phase 2 of the project is the new rail switch yard. And that would be constructed to replace the tracks that are being removed out of the downtown area in the Phase 3 project. Removal of that existing rail yard. And along with that, some connections would have to be made to connect the main lines to replace the yard that has been removed or will be removed. Phase 4 of the master plan, which is an ongoing phase, is an agreement between the city and Burlington Northern to eliminate as many at-grade crossings as we can as the potential projects are identified. We've already started 2 projects. One was completed in 2008, the 57th Street overpass. Another project, the 69th Street overpass, started last year. We wrapped up this year in August in time for school to start. And then the ongoing portion of the phase is, as I stated earlier, we'll be looking at potential future crossings that may be eliminated in downtown or throughout town. A little more detail on phase 2 and 3. This is the portion of the master plan which we received the federal earmark of $40 million in 2006. The government agencies providing oversight for the use of this money are the Federal Highway Administration and the South Dakota Department of Transportation. One of the requirements whenever you use federal dollars is to obtain an environmental clearance. And for our project, we are performing an environmental assessment, or EA, and that is currently what we're working on right now. So, last 90 days. As I said, it's been kind of a busy 90 days. We've got a lot accomplished. To start out with, we've conducted multiple design meetings to help work out the details for the different alternatives that are part of the environmental assessment. And we did this to identify which alternatives were feasible, so that once we can determine if they're feasible, then we can roll into the environmental review and see which is going to be the lowest impact to the environment. As part of this, we've also conducted meetings with some of the major stakeholders on the project, including Burlington Northern, of course, Ellis and Eastern Railroad, as they will be impacted quite heavily by the project, Xcel Energy, which has property along some of the new switchyard sites, and the Brandon Chamber of Commerce, as the new switchyard site is located, or the potential sites are between Sioux Falls and Brandon. They will be impacted as well, and we like to keep them informed. And also, earlier this afternoon, which is why I'm a little flushed, I took some of the state and federal regulatory agencies, which will be reviewing the environmental assessment. I took them on a project tour this afternoon of the different sites to give them a direct view of each of these sites. It'll help give them a little bit of context for the alternatives that we're looking at, and so to help maybe fill in some of the gaps that don't always show up in a black and white document. So this should help ease the review process once we get to that stage. The result of all of this is we've determined which sites are feasible, and now we can roll into the environmental review of those sites. Two sites we have evaluated in the downtown area, or for the new rail switchyard. We've also identified 2 sites that we've evaluated in the downtown area, and primarily what we're looking at is the new connection that had to be made between the main rail lines. And finally, we have one new alternative that has been brought forth over the last 90 days, and I'll introduce that to you here in a little bit. Start out the new rail yard alternatives. As I said, the potential sites are located in the corridor along Rice Street or Holly Boulevard between Sioux Falls and Brandon. The first site has been reviewed previously and is still part of the environmental document, is the BNSF mainline yard. It's along the BNSF mainline Corson subdivision, and there's 2 potential alternatives there. One is on the northwest side and one is on the southeast side of that main rail line. And as I said, it's still part of the EA as a feasible alternative. The second alternative we looked at is the Ellison Eastern mainline yard. This is one that's been brought up to look at a potential site a little further away from the river. And this site had some engineering challenges that we wanted to look at. And I'm happy to say, through our review process, this is a feasible site, and we will be pursuing this through the environmental review. The downtown alternatives we looked at are what I call the Y connection alternatives, and those are the ones that connect the rail line that goes to the northeast and the rail line that goes out to the northwest. The previous alternative that's been studied and is still a feasible alternative, which is in the document, is the new bridge. And to review, this would be a second bridge crossing the river that would parallel the existing bridge that now crosses the river in Falls Park. And there would be a curvature track associated to tie those two lines together. The other alternative that I discussed at the last update was the modification of the existing bridge. And we looked at that to try and minimize the construction over the river, minimize those impacts, where we would basically split the existing bridge on the southeast side and have it fork in two different directions, one with the existing track going south and a new connection to the northeast. Unfortunately, as we looked into this a little deeper, we found modifying that existing bridge just wasn't a feasible option. There were some engineering challenges of trying to modify that old bridge. And the other thing that we found was that there were some safety concerns of having a switch right over the river on a bridge. It's not standard design procedure for the railroad, and there were some safety concerns associated with that. So this alternative has dropped off as not feasible, and it'll be accounted for that way within the document. Because we've been looking at alternatives to try and minimize the impact to the river and Falls Park, I'll kind of give you a little bit overview of the new alternative that we've come up with as a substitution for the new bridge across the river. And to explain this, I kind of going to give you a little bit of an overview of the rail yard operations in town, because it's a little tough to understand. So to start with, this little circle here represents a train coming into town from that northeast side of town on the Corson subdivision. Existing operations for a train that has to come into town and then go out to the northwest to Madison. The train would come into town, enter the rail yard site, do their reconfiguring that they needed to, and then exit back out. While they're doing that, we're blocking the railroad crossings at 6th and 8th Street and causing some delays. If we install the new Y bridge, as one of the alternatives are, what that would do is the train would be able to make a smooth transition coming across that bridge and come out of town. It wouldn't conflict the crossings in the downtown area and just be able to make a smooth transition. The new alternative we're looking at as a replacement to that bridge, we're calling the Canton siding alternative. And what this would be is a new parallel siding track along the existing Burlington Northern Main Line track running south to Canton. What this would allow the trains to do is come through town, stop there, reorient themselves as they need to, and come back in, and go back out of town. So what we would look at is a train would come through, pass straight through the downtown area, come down to that siding option, stop, switch their engines from the south end of the track to the north end of the track, and then be able to make a smooth transition back out of town. The reason that this alternative has now come up to be feasible is the construction of the 57th Street and 69th Street overpasses. What these bridges have allowed us to do is we've got a good long, almost 2-mile long corridor on the south side of town that doesn't have any at-grade crossings, which would be required for the siding option. So the overall master plan has helped us come up with a new alternative for the Phase 2-3 project. Moving forward, the next 90 days. Now that we have the feasible alternatives, we'll be looking at finalizing the preliminary design. The Canton siding option is new. We're still working out the details on that. We'll wrap that up here in the next 90 days. Along with that, we'll start performing the environmental review of the newer sites that have been added to the project, go through the different potential conflicts and evaluate those. And once that's all wrapped up, we'll basically have assembled all of the information we need to write the environmental assessment document. So at the end of these 90 days, we should start preparing that information for public comment and agency comment. Long range, our target milestones, we're still on schedule moving forward. Next scheduled update to the council is October 3rd. Hopefully we'll be able to review the environmental work that's been done. 2 public meetings in November and May. The draft EA should be completed around the end of the year, with the final EA for review and approval in September. And we're still targeting design and construction 2012 through 2014. And this schedule is reflected in the 1-page project summary that Kendra and I worked on and prepared, and that you received as a handout. You'll be receiving those on a regular scheduled update. Before I turn it over to questions, as Mark indicated, we've got some representatives from the consulting firm that's drafting the EA. I wanted to introduce one of them and let him come up and give a little bit of an overview on the company and their role in the project. I'll introduce Alan Yombor. He's the vice president of the Lincoln Division. He's got over 35 years of experience in water resources and transportation projects, and he's a registered professional engineer in 7 states. So I'll let Al talk. Thanks.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Josh, and thanks to the City Council for letting me take the opportunity to give you a little bit of background of Alfred Benish. We're a medium-sized consulting firm of about 350 people spread throughout 9 states and 15 offices. You can see on your slide there where we're located. We've been in business about 60 years, and we've been recently just as a medium-sized firm, just to give you an indication, in the Engineering News Record puts out the top 500 design firms every year, and this year we're 160th, so you can see we're kind of in the middle. We do a variety of work in various services. In transportation, we work in rail, highway, aviation. We have geotechnical engineering, we have environmental sciences people, and we have water wastewater people. I thought it would be important to give you just a little bit of background. Formerly, you would have known our firm, our project team, as HWS Consulting Group. We merged with HWS merged with Alfred Benish about a year ago. We've known each other for a long time, beginning back in a project in the mid-'80s on a rail project. We've kind of stayed in touch, and about 2 years ago we started talking. We decided that to join forces would be a benefit for both firms for a number of reasons. First of all, it expanded our service area. For example, Benish brought to HWS structural engineering, very strong structural engineering, water, wastewater, and we brought to the table aviation, geotechnical, and environmental sciences. So it was a good marriage between the two of us, and that happened about a year ago. So I just wanted to kind of fill you in on that. The other advantage for both of our firms was that you can see on the slide there, the red or brown, whatever color that is the old HWS, and the other two regions are the old Benish. So you can see that it allowed us to expand our geographical reach for both firms. So just a little bit of background. Our project team is very excited about the project, and we look forward to continuing to work with you for a successful project. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Josh? Councilor Jameson.
Josh, thanks for being here. Someday we'd like to maybe get a tour of the railroad project as well, and maybe ride a train around the City of Sioux Falls if you can arrange that.
Be happy to arrange that.
One of the questions I have, do we have a memorandum of understanding between all the stakeholders?
That is something we're currently working on. We have to get far enough along in the environmental assessment process to really know what the alternatives that are probably going to be carried forward as part of the design process. But also, we want to have the memorandum of understanding completed before the EA is completed and signed. So it's a concurrent process, and we've got a draft that we're working on, but it's not completed yet. We'll continue to work on that as we move forward in the process.
Is that on this list?
I believe it is.
Sign a memorandum of understanding.
Yeah, sign a memorandum of understanding, March of 2012. That's the date that the city and Burlington Northern targeted as their goal to complete and sign a memorandum of understanding.
Josh, do you have any kind of a feel for the 38 or 7 million that's left, and how far that's going to take us? I mean, just the bridge construction alone. Do you have any sense of that?
It really depends on the alternative that's selected that we need to do. The bridge is a very expensive alternative. If that is found to be the preferred alternative moving forward, more than likely the earmark will not be sufficient to complete construction. If we look at the siding option as the preferred alternative, we are a little closer to that. But there is a chance the earmark will not be enough, and the city will have to find alternate funding to bridge that gap.
Okay.
Further questions for Josh? Councilor Erpenbach.
Thank you. Thanks, Josh. I appreciate you coming forward and helping us with this. The first thing that comes to my mind that I know I'm going to get calls about is this alternative makes it look like trains are going to make more trips through downtown than they do now. And so my question is, do we need to worry about that now? Is that something that will be part of the conversation, or should citizens start asking those questions now so that we're thinking about that in terms of, I know we're trying to get away from the at-grade crossings, and so that would help the horn issue at 2 in the morning. Mm-hmm. But that's a long ways down the road. And so now it looks like, as you ran your little dot down the PowerPoint, that train comes in and then it turns around and goes back out. So it actually makes 2 trips through the core area of the city. So how do we deal with that in terms of timing and asking those questions?
That will be addressed within the document and brought forth during those public meetings of what actual changes are to the rail traffic at those crossings. We haven't put those numbers together yet that I can share with you right now. My perception is what we might increase for trains coming through town. They're moving, they're not stopping to switch cars back and forth. So the time that trains are actually blocking the street crossings, I think will be reduced overall. Maybe at some crossings might see a little more traffic, but the overall at-grade conflicts in town are going to be reduced. But we'll definitely evaluate that and present that information to the public. It's definitely something that I know there will be concerns, and we want to address that.
Well, if I might just add to that, part of the things that I hear about the horns at 2 in the morning, the train whistles at 2 in the morning, will now be transferred to the southeastern district where there will be more trains seen and more, even though they aren't making as much noise. So I would just hand those concerns off to Councilor Aguilar. But I think those are going to be the real, I know that we're talking about traffic and safety and all of those things downtown, but it's those folks that are being woken in the middle of the night and then calling me that are the ones that are, you know, are having concerns about it. And this is going to make it look like they're going to hear trains twice.
Yep. And noise is definitely one of the impacts that we're going to be evaluated.
Okay.
When we first brought this alternative up, that clicked in my mind as something that definitely needed to be addressed, and we're going to evaluate that and present that information as we get it.
Thank you.
Councilor Entenmann.
I guess, excuse me, that was kind of a question I had too. The new track sighting alternative, that Phase 3 that you had there, compared to what we already have at Southeastern, you're just doubling the track then. And on Southeastern, we have trains that set along that section from 26th Street going south quite often. There's a lot of train traffic there. So now you're saying that it's anticipated between 57th and 69th Street then you'd have double tracks in there with more train traffic moving some of that switching stuff down into that area, right?
Yeah, the area you're talking about that you see cars parked now is up by the 26th Street and Pasley area.
Yes.
And that they will not be able to park rail cars there more than likely because of the siding option. You know, they're going to need to keep that track clear for the traffic that needs to come down to that siding. So I would expect to see those that storage of vehicles to not be there anymore. We're still working out the details on the operations for the siding, but through our initial discussion, what I've been told is the trains that use that siding will only be there for at max maybe a day. They're just going to come in, reorient themselves, and come out for the most part. But there might be sit overnight waiting for the next day's operations.
The only thing I caution us on in that is that is a growing residential area down in that section. It's not a commercial area. It is a growing residential area, and I just caution us about trying to put that kind of an operation in a residential area.
Yep, we're definitely going to evaluate that.
Thank you.
Councilor Brown.
Joshua, a couple of questions. So is it the cost that's driving that Canton siding option?
It's two things. It's the trying to minimize the impacts to the Falls Park area and cost.
And I appreciate that because we've spent millions on Falls Park. I dislike the idea of cluttering that up with another bridge. So I appreciate you bringing some options. And what's driving the alternatives on the rail yard, the two different sites?
The original sites, as we looked at, called the BNSF mainline sites, those are down close to the river, some impacts to the floodplain, some wetlands. There were some concerns from the regulatory agencies of whether there were significant impacts or not. So as we looked at that, BNSF, as a good partner with us, said, presented the Ellison Eastern option to try and mitigate those problems and bring the rail yard farther away from the river to minimize those environmental issues.
Okay. And then the question that I get most often is, where are the dollars for this $38 million? Where are they today?
They are not in a city account, I can tell you that. Federal Highway is the Federal Highway Administration is the federal agency that controls the funding. They use the Department of Transportation as the local arm that does the day-to-day operations with us. Federal Highway will authorize spending as we sign contracts. So to date, the money that is approved for spending is only what we have signed contracts for the environmental review process.
So it's not sitting in a bank in Pierre
Nope.
or anything like that?
No. It is still under the control of the federal government, the majority of the funding.
Okay. And then I have, actually, maybe Mark can better answer these because it's a little bigger scope. Mark, this is a city project, correct?
It is.
And in your department,
It is.
this is a very minor thing, but as a marketing person, I'm wondering why we have a completely separate logo for this project.
It's very common with large projects, and there's multiple stakeholders, and not only in consultants but multiple agencies, and to give one common tie between all those agencies, it's common to have for large projects a large project logo, and that was the only essence of it. Not to branch out any further.
Just as a marketing person, I dislike the idea of us always creating new logos for projects and departments. I think it causes confusion. I think it discredits the value of the city's work on this project, and I think it's an unnecessary expense. I mean, in the scope of things, it's not a huge deal, but I just would discourage departments from doing that.
Point taken.
Councilor Rolfing.
Joshua, and Mark, maybe, but Joshua probably, could you put up the slide, any one of the ones that has the whole city on it that shows the whole framework? Right there's good. Oh, yeah, I bet somebody had fun with that little dot. No, that was good, the one that you had. No, go back to the one that... That's good, right there. Somebody had to have fun with making that dot.
It took me a while to get that figured out, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Don't learn from him. Don't learn from him. We were waiting for a chart here someplace, but now we know where it was, right? It's in the dot. Anyway, when we get this done, the way you're doing this, nothing's really going to stop downtown except the eastern or the Ellis and what is it? Ellis and eastern main line, right? And they're just going to pass through.
In the downtown area, there's always going to be two tracks that run through the downtown area to maintain that connection between the two north rail lines and the south rail line. So there's always going to be two rail lines. In the existing yard, if you know the area, there's kind of two sets of crossings there on 6th and 8th Street. The east set of crossings, that's where the lines are going to be maintained. So if the alternatives come through, what you're going to have is just through movements in the downtown area.
Right.
Nothing is going to be stopping there.
Nobody's going to unload or pack onto anything like that. And the Eastern and Ellis is coming in there, and they're just shipping out and going either south, north, or east.
Yep.
So my question is, when I look at this, I say, why are we bothering with downtown? Why did we even have to bother with downtown? If you're moving the deal up here, between Canton and there, why didn't we just come down here where the Madison came down, and the one from north, the D and I, and take a left-hand turn along the interstate and come over here?
You're talking about making a connection like along 60th Street North up there, and then just avoid
downtown all the way, and then take the Ellis and take them straight north and across, and take the Canton one and bring it up over there. Bring it up and jog it a little bit to the east, and avoid the city altogether.
I believe that was part of the original master plan, and it was studied to try and
too
maintain those
expensive?
connections. Yeah, cost is the primary.
They had to buy too much
issue
land,
for
and
that.
okay,
Yep.
it just seemed to me that with the amount of land we could gain and things, we might have come out better, but.
Yep, it was looked at, and we just couldn't. It fell off because of affordability.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Jameson.
Josh, when you and or the group added these new alternatives for consideration, who decided whether or not they were worthy of looking at further?
It was a joint effort between the city and Burlington Northern, as were the two primary stakeholders in the project. And also, as we go along, we need concurrence from the Department of Transportation and Federal Highway as we move forward with the alternatives. So it's a group effort, and part of the steering committee's objectives is to meet and discuss alternatives and determine which ones need to be, which can be included and which should not be.
Well, the reason I ask is that the council has, made this railroad relocation project a priority for us to have taken care of as fast as possible. And I'm concerned that these new alternatives keep popping up and it just takes longer to work out all the bugs on each of those alternatives. And then essentially they could be added and added and added. And I guess my challenge for you is, more so directly, is if this council wanted to expedite this process in some way, what would we have to do? What could we do? Anything? Or are we just going to kind of sit in the sidelines and watch this all unfold?
Ultimately, it comes down to the requirements for the federal funding. And we need to complete an environmental assessment and have it approved by the regulatory agencies and the Federal Highway Administration. And as part of that, we need to look at all feasible alternatives to make the project as a whole have the most minimal impact to the environment that we can. If we did not have the federal funding, if it was purely a city-funded project, we would not have to go through the environmental process. And then it would just be a matter of negotiating an agreement between us and the railroad, and that would simplify the project. But because of the federal funding and wanting to look at which alternatives are going to provide us with to maintain the railroad operations and minimize the impacts to the environment, we need to look at all alternatives that could meet those goals.
If you get to the alternative made 57th and 69th, that side yard, side switch, and you bring that to us as the preferred alternative, and we said, geez, we really don't want that happening in a neighborhood area, then what would happen?
Those types of discussions would happen through the public comment period. I mean, if the public said, we don't like the siding option, we would rather have the bridge go through the falls, that's the purpose for the public comment period, is to figure out which is going to be the most preferred alternative in the public's mind. If the city decides that they don't like an option, we can definitely bring that to the table. But I would caution us to not go against the purpose of the environmental assessment and try and override that, as it could jeopardize our funding.
Councilor?
One smaller one. Did we ever figure out the first right of refusal with Burlington Northern?
I have met with Ellison Eastern and talked through that issue specifically. I have identified that they do have some first right of refusal on the property downtown. It is a work in progress. Ellison Eastern is going to probably be added to the memorandum of understanding because of the impacts to them and the first right of refusal and possibly the location for the new switch yard. So they're going to be added to the project. So Ellison Eastern has said they're willing to work with us. They want to be good partners on the project, but there will be some details that need to be worked out as we go.
Councilor Anderson Jr.
How you doing today, Josh?
Good.
Let's see here. To start with, on any project like this, I'm looking at these alternatives along for moving the switching yards there between Brandon and Sioux Falls.
Mm-hmm.
What type of cost estimates do we have on those alternatives? Because at this point in time, we should have some type of cost estimates on these.
I got some roughly updated numbers, and these are very quickly put together, and some of the details still need to be worked out. But the siding, the new yards could be anywhere from 20 to 30 million themselves. So,
What are the challenges with those two alternatives that we have out there by Brandon? I guess each one of them has to have challenges. We're looking at Part of it, some of that area was underwater a couple weeks ago. And then another one is by the XL Energy electrical plant, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that going over the road that goes into that plant?
Yes. We would be impacting the access to the power plant, and we have met with Excel to talk about those impacts, and we've laid out an alternative to realign that road for them around the switch yard, and they've shown some positive feedback on us, and we'll keep them involved in the process to make sure that we can work out a solution that'll benefit both. Just briefly, the sites along the Burlington Northern main line, because they're close to the river, probably have more environmental challenges. And the site at Ellison Eastern, along Ellison Eastern's line, probably have more design challenges. There's some major overhead power lines. The connection down to Burlington Northern's main line has a big grade there that we have to work around. So each has its challenges, and throughout the process, we'll take all those into account and determine which one is the preferred option.
Okay, and then with the environmental remediation downtown with the tracks that we move, do we have an estimate on what that could be at this time?
We're looking in the $5 to $6 million ballpark estimate.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So, and I caution everybody that those numbers
estimates.
will be adjusted as we move forward through the design process, but they're a good starting point.
Thank you.
I just have one question, if everyone else is finished. What role exactly does the council play in the final decision-making process? Is there, or do they have a role? Would it just be if additional dollars were needed? I guess I'm looking at Mark for this question. I don't think it's fair for Josh.
I'll certainly attempt to address it. I think us as a community, and obvious you as the elected leaders, play a key role. I certainly can't remember a time where the city is engaged in this level of an environmental assessment. And so I just like the memorandum of understanding, I think this will be a work in progress. The key with any environmental assessment that the federal agencies want to see is they certainly want to see more than one alternative. And the crux of this project is that Burlington Northern didn't come to us, we went to them. And so we're trying to identify what feasible alternatives are there to actually remove the rail line from downtown to out of town. And so as we go forward, we'll work to also better advise and see what role that actually is.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
If there's no other business to come before this body, I will call this meeting adjourned.